Championship program was built with men that ran everywhere. Right? Adama Sanogo ran everywhere. Jordan Hawkins, he ran everywhere. Andre ran everywhere. Isaiah Whaley, the wrench.
Hello and welcome to the Fast Break pregame show. My name is Aman Kidwai, manager of the UConn blog and the Fast Break newsletter, and I'm joined by our basketball writer, Patrick Martin. We've got a fun episode and lots of highlights to discuss. It has been quite a week. We'll talk about UConn's chase for the Big East title, as well as the extremely important transition of power occurring within UConn athletics. This show is a production of the Fast Break newsletter. We've got a bunch of writers and video, photo, podcast makers going deep on UConn men's basketball, featuring in-depth reporting and analysis of the team, as well as some really detailed stuff on the program's history. This show is also a production of 22 Threads, purveyors of fine t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and other gear inspired by the Connecticut culture and lifestyle. They just launched a new line of Hassan Diarra gear that you should all go check out. That's 22threads.com. Last week, the Huskies shook off the Creighton loss by stomping Villanova on Saturday to claim the season sweep over the Wildcats. Tristan Newton notched a triple-double, while Cam Spencer dropped 25, and the Huskies held Nova to a 3 of 24 performance from behind the arc. It was a tremendous defensive team performance keyed by Donovan Clingan, who did not get a foul until the second half, and a balanced scoring performance by the team overall. The Huskies have their final home game of the season against Seton Hall at Gampel. Then they'll visit Marquette on Wednesday, and Providence on Saturday. Patrick, the Big East crown is in sight. This would be a big one for UConn. First league regular season since 2006. What do you think? It sounds like 96% odds of it happening, but what do you think as it relates to this final stretch of the season?
Magic number is 1, and you've got 3 games left. Because these are student athletes, I'm going to give you a college or a school metaphor here. You don't want to be forced to cram for a test. Having to go on the road at Marquette and at Providence, that has been circled since the schedule came out as like the hardest portion of UConn's conference slate. And the Huskies have like a rare opportunity to like lessen the impact and importance of those games if you do just a little studying at home versus Seton Hall. It's like any classic tenet of life, and even Hurley referenced that in the College Game Day promo about, putting in the work in practice so the games aren't as intense, like the Navy SEAL state of mind, where like if you train super hard, you avoid having like to encounter that resistance later on. So UConn can make life a lot easier for itself if they win the game in front of them. Grind it out and check it off the list as soon as possible. Or else if you slack off and drop a home tilt first of the season, you're going to be paying for it in the future with a lot tighter and a lot more difficult games.
Yeah, I think it's you should really take care of business at home if you can. And like we've discussed over and over, it'd be the first time doing it in a very long time. And then one other actual silver lining to capturing this Big East title would be, remember when Georgetown made that crazy run through the Big East tournament and won that thing a couple years back? I think we got to talk about the visit that ESPN made to campus. ESPN, not an official partner of the University of Connecticut's Big East Basketball League, still, however, needed to make that visit because at the time, number one team in the country, number 3 team in the country, whatever. An absolutely tremendous team and set of stories, a great coach. And what we got on ESPN that morning on Saturday, 2-hour infomercial for UConn and the program. So in that respect, an amazingly successful day. You also have Rip Hamilton's number being retired, thrown up permanently. I guess Donovan Clingan will be the last guy to be wearing it. Rip Hamilton, we're not qualified to even speak in any detailed way about how great his career was, besides noting the 2 All-Americans, the national championship at UConn, the last second shot, and all of the Big East accolades, the fact that he had an amazing professional career with the Detroit Pistons, all of those things, doing it as a high character guy, doing it with a mask So playing through weird and different injuries, pulling off one of the biggest upsets in NBA Finals history. Just a cool, good overall guy. I mean, Rip Hamilton, baby. Good, just great vibes.
You can tell how smooth he was, like when he hit that half court shot. There wasn't some exuberant celebration. Just like looked around, like this is what we do.
Yeah.
This is what we do. Like Jay Williams was just so flustered by how composed Hamilton was by all of that. He didn't even shoot. He didn't even they were supposed to take a little half court shot. Hamilton literally shot him out of the game, and that's just what he does. I also thought back. I think it was making the rounds of like that awesome. Was it a March Madness commercial with like the two Washington, or like it was like the Washington people and the Huskies, and they didn't like each other, and like the dad was still mad, and they show the Hamilton clip. And the guy's like, I went to UConn for business school. Like, I'm not even a UConn fan. And they show the Hamilton clip, and the Hamilton. Yeah. I mean, so much around him is just like cool. And for Connecticut, I think that's something that is going to be very lasting.
Absolutely. So in the spirit of that, number going up, first one in a while, only 4 numbers up there retired. Patrick, what's your short list for guys who should go up there next on the men's basketball program?
On the men's side, we should say we need to specify that part. Emeka Okafor is the obvious answer because he was the next guy after Hamilton to really kind of like in the 2004 team be the one. But I want to throw a curveball out there. Kemba is also another one that comes to mind, is Shabazz Napier. He didn't have the professional career that Walker or Okafor had, but winning 2 national titles in 4 years, being like a firebrand for a lot of like the NCAA, like the Hungry Huskies stuff, being very outspoken about a lot of that. Having gone through like if you're just focusing strictly on his UConn achievements, I think he has to get a long and hard look. And do I think that should be like, do I think he should be before Okafor and Kemba Walker? Not necessarily, but like, I do think that needs to be brought up about like, we don't really realize how insane it was that he won 2 national titles in 4 years. And it was just a cool nugget to reflect on that and think that if it wasn't for Jerome Dyson's injury, Kemba and Shabazz really would have had similar UConn arcs where Kemba was like the backup and the understudy to AJ Price in 2009 and then took the team over in 2011 and, had Shabazz as his backup and understudy in 2011 and Shabazz takes the team over in 2014. It really would have been some, fitting symmetry there, which is a shame it never worked out, but I think UConn fans will live with what they have. So yeah, like long story short, like yes, it should be Okafor, but like don't sleep on Shabazz if they really want to just focus on college accolades.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting is we don't know what the full criteria are. You named my exact short list there. It's those 3 guys. I like Kemba actually because of what he accomplished professionally and the incredible, amazing significance of what he accomplished while at UConn in 3 years. I mean, that 2011 run is just pure stuff of legend. I know Shabazz Napier is right up there too, exactly in the same boat. And I agree, his UConn accomplishments and the circumstances under which they occurred, including the loyalty to stick through the coaching transition, through the league transition, through a year where you're banned from the postseason. That's tremendous stuff. So I think Shabazz has a great case. My first vote would go to Kemba Walker because of the way he really turned himself into an NBA All-Star, grinding through the incredible adversity of being drafted by the Bobcats and somehow becoming successful out of that situation. It's super, super hard to become an NBA All-Star. It gets harder in each and every year, to state the glaringly obvious. So that's why he would be my choice for first.
Can we get the Charlotte Bobcats and / Hornets to just stay away from UConn players in general? I mean, Okafor as well.
Seems like it could be a good idea.
Yeah, can we unsubscribe from that partnership?
So, one other thing about the game day piece that I did want to bring up, and uh, neatly transitions us to our next segment. Dan Hurley explained to us, or actually, we actually got to see some behind the scenes of Dan Hurley leading a practice. It was exactly as intense as you would expect, maybe a little bit more. We're going to have to just play the clip because I cannot even do it full justice. This is Adama Sanogo ran everywhere.
Championship program was built with men that ran everywhere. Right? Adama Sanogo ran everywhere. Jordan Hawkins, he ran everywhere. Andre ran everywhere. Isaiah Whaley, the wrench.
The wrench part absolutely gets me every time. I'm thinking about this every single day, on the hour, every hour. The wrench! And he starts turning into a wrench. He's looking at it. It makes, it's
this is a small wrench, so I'm kind of defeating the bit.
You're
right
doing
now.
it right now.
But if this is a bigger wrench right here is my hand. Just apps like, oh, the wrench. Like, you cannot watch that and not get insanely pumped up. I dare you.
If I'm ever, yelling things in a sequence, I am absolutely ending it with the wrench and doing that. How can you not?
And it's just more of Hurley, like, he just works himself into these, like, frothy rages. And whenever, he just gets going, it's like, oh, let him cook. Like, he's something crazy is going to come out, and it's going to be a soundbite that's going to last for ages.
Yeah, and to anyone who thinks that he's maybe playing it up for the cameras or anything, I highly, highly, highly doubt that. In fact, he's most likely downplaying his insanity and thinking, okay, ESPN College Game Day is here. There are hundreds and hundreds of potential recruits watching this. I have to be as cool as possible. And he still went wrench like this. So Dan Hurley was letting it fly. And we love to see it. That's our guy. He's from Jersey City, and he drives a Ford Raptor. We have no choice but to respect it. Another one of Dan Hurley's gripes is the Big East schedulers. He continues to insist that maybe someone has some issue with UConn and is punishing them in the league with the schedule and possibly the refereeing and possibly the lack of promotion around UConn's success. I know it sounds like crazy talk, but when you do think about it, the league has not done the best job of promoting that it had the number one team in the country for 6 weeks, one that was unanimous, one that was a reigning national champion, and has so many great individual stories on its roster as well. And some of these scheduling quirks, Dan Hurley seems to be pretty upset about, as well as the way some refereeing has been going for or against his team in league play. Patrick, any thoughts on the Big East agenda against UConn?
I don't know. I mean, when you're number one, it's like it's kind of hard to like be slight and to feel like you're slighted. And I know, Hurley is a master motivator and constantly finding chips on people's shoulders to get them to kind of like, to drive up support and to drive up interest. If UConn, I considered them more like overlooked last year. And I thought there was more of a case last year where, like, okay, look, they lost 5 games in January, but clearly they're blowing the doors off people since then. Why are they not getting this respect? But this year, like, when you're the number one team in the country, ESPN's got their trucks in there and they're doing a whole infomercial. Is there some merit to the scheduling stuff? Yes, but I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm like a Big East shill or anything like that. But I remember Marvin Lewis had like a quote one time about like, why didn't your team perform very well? And he had like a very dry answer that was like, well, the other team's trying to win too. And to connect that, like, it's like they have to win too. It's their job to win as well. Like when two things are trying. So like any issues with the schedule, it's like, well, they're trying to fit everyone else in as well. That's an incredibly difficult task. And maybe I'm just not like a conspiracy theorist, because I really don't think that there are certain like agendas against different programs. I mean, UConn has Bristol right there. Like, they consistently, I think, get a lot of ESPN coverage, and does that trickle down to the Big East? I really don't think that's like a hill that we should die on. Honestly, there are much bigger things at play, and if you're the number one team in the country, I think it's just something you brush off your shoulder. If you're consistently a top 25 team and that's not getting recognized, that's a different story. But I think everyone's talking about UConn, and I just parity is much more interesting to talk about. When UConn lost to Creighton, now all the articles are coming out about like, oh, it's a virtual tie between Purdue, Houston, and UConn. That stirs up debate of like, oh, who do you have? Purdue, who do you think's better, UConn, Purdue, or Houston? As opposed to before, the articles were like, UConn or the field. It's way more interesting and way more clickbaity to kind of have these, this three-headed monster versus like a team running away from the pack. That's all I got.
Yeah, I mean, I think I will hold off on making any accusations towards the Big East at the moment personally, but I think if Dan Hurley feels that way, he is fine to. UConn is about to play Seton Hall after an 8-day break, with Seton Hall coming off of a road trip to Creighton and a game at Butler on Saturday, the same day that was the last time UConn played. Look, we know Seton Hall is a well-coached team. They beat UConn on December 20th. That was the game where Donovan Clingan got hurt. So sometimes the loss gets attributed to that. However, the Huskies were down 5 at the half of that game. They were still down by more than that when Clingan departed early in the second half. Patrick, how are you feeling about this matchup going into the home meeting with Seton Hall?
Glad it's at home. Look, whatever seed Seton Hall ends up at, 8, 9, 10, 11, I would not want to play them. I think they are a great representation of the conference. They've won 4 of the last 5. They 3 straight as of now. They are currently playing Creighton. But I like the way this roster is constructed. You've got this 3-headed monster in the backcourt of Kadari Richmond, Dre Davis, and Alamir Dawes. All 3 of them transfers, kind of finding themselves at Seton Hall. Richmond from Syracuse, Dre Davis from Louisville, and Dawes from Clemson. They all average 14 points per game. They combined for 60 in their last win against Butler. The 3 of them combined for 51 against UConn. And like the head of that Hydra is Richmond. And he, anyone that's been following UConn closely in the last 4 years knows that he has just absolutely owned the Huskies. And I think it's a lot to do with the fact that like he was the same recruiting year as Andre Jackson, and widely considered or rumored to be like the Andre Jackson plan B in case Andre Jackson went to Syracuse. So he was like a strong UConn lean until Jackson committed. Then Kadari Richmond went to Syracuse, and he plays like he resents that every time he faces UConn. And I mean, as a senior, I think it's between him, Newton, Devin Carter for Big East Player of the Year. Shutting him down is priority like 1, 2, and 3, and we'll get into the keys of the game later. Inside, Jaden Bediako, I think, is one of the most underrated bigs in the conference. I didn't think much of him going into that UConn game, and he looked outstanding, and he has continued to play well. He's almost a double-double machine. He's number 10 in Evan Maya's like defensive BPM rankings. Overall, like Seton Hall, nothing really jumps out off the page advanced metrics wise as far as like offense or defense, but Shaheen Holloway's teams, like if you saw the St. Peter's run, they defend as a team, they're tough, and when you've got those 3 guards, any one of them can go off for 30 points and give you enough offense to carry you. Last time out, Seton Hall won the fast break point battle 18-0 off of 18 UConn turnovers. We talked about the Clingan injury. What's also different, though, is Stephon Castle was still working his way back from that knee injury. He only played 20 minutes and was off the bench last time. He will be the dude to guard Kadari Richmond at the point of attack. And I think that is a huge game changer. And it's why I feel a lot better about this matchup because he is UConn's best individual perimeter defender. And he's figuring out his shot now. He's shooting 35% from three, and he's making teams pay that start to sag off him a little bit. You saw that happen in the Villanova game. And with all of the shooters that UConn has at its disposal, all you need is for him to be competent, and that he won't get the Andre Jackson treatment. But I think his emergence in the last month makes this an entirely different game.
Yeah, I'm optimistic about a much better UConn defensive performance for those reasons that you mentioned, particularly Klingon and Castle really getting into a groove in terms of their immense impact that they make for UConn and its team defense. And I think that'll be great in terms of being able to stop Richmond. But yeah, you always have to respect a Shaheen Holloway coach team. He is an absolute grinder. I think what they did game plan wise against UConn in their game earlier this year was incredibly impressive, and simply something that you have to respect. So with all of that in mind, Patrick, we touched on a little bit of these things, but what are your keys to the game?
Kadari Richmond's nickname is Cooks with a K. First of all, awesome nickname. Almost up there with, but not close. Contain Cooks, number 1, 2, and 3, as I said before. Sub keys beyond that, take care of the ball, which in turn, negates the fast break points, and avoid foul trouble. Best player, stop your best player, take care of the ball, foul trouble. Those are all keys we've been talking about since we've been doing this show. But when you're as good as UConn is, it really is as simple as do your job and you win. But you want me to get deeper about what that entails? That means walling off the paint and forcing Kadari Richmond into these mid-range shots. He's not a great three-point shooter, but he's almost too quick that he doesn't even really find himself in that position. So force him into that which is the NBA ugly, analytical zone, would be a way to cool him off. Because if he gets going downhill and is getting to the free throw line, he's just impossible to stop. And then when you add more people to him, he's a very, very good passer, averages 5 assists per game, and they've got guys that can make you pay when you sag off them. It also entails we talked about him before, a positive Hassan Diarra experience, who, by the way, is a Shaheen Holloway type, if I've ever seen one. He is the tempo change that can match Seton Hall's energy, I think. And if we're not sacrificing turnovers when he's out there, he's going to be able to match what Seton Hall brings. And that leads to the third sub key, and matching Seton Hall's physicality without fouling. And I don't mean just at the rim. I mean by setting screens, no moving screens, blocking out, no over the backs. That's not just UConn's bigs, that's everybody, between gang rebounding, making sure your screens are set, just really, really solid, tough fundamentals that can't get phased by physicality. You hear about all those crazy rebounding drills that Calhoun did. I hope UConn's doing some of those in this off week, because it sounds cliche, but against a team like Seton Hall, if you're winning loose ball battles and those hustle points, it takes so much away of what makes them dangerous, which is broken plays and chaos and just thriving on that type of intensity. And with Castle, hopefully shutting down Richmond, I feel pretty good about this. I did see that UConn had not beaten Seton Hall by more than 11 points in the Dan Hurley era. I'm going to go with they break that streak today and they keep their perfect home record alive, which I think will be the first time since 2006. But Castle's featured role gives Richmond fits. The reign of Richmond ends 76-62 UConn.
Yeah, I think UConn should be extra motivated here. They've got the opportunity to clinch this one at home, their final home game of the season. We've also got a Jonathan transition occurring. There will be a ceremony as we retire Jonathan 14 from his official mascot duties into elder states dog duties, and Jonathan the 15th officially takes over. His shadowing period is over, which started back in the fall this year. What a ride it has been for Jonathan, but hey, we've got a noon tip-off, CBS. Bill Raftery will be on the call. What more can you ask for the UConn Huskies on Sunday? I think that's going to do it for us. Thank you all for watching.
The wrench!